I've been thinking a little bit about how I can show you guys how to make stuff from recycled plastic. You can recycle the plastic yourself at home at, with a very low budget, maybe even with the things that you have at home. And so I basically boiled it down to the very basics and to the simplest method that we ever used to recycle plastic, and to melt the plastic and make it into a new shape. Basically, you can recycle plastic, by just keeping it the way that it is. But what we're doing is we're melting the plastic. We're melting bottle caps into new shapes and then make basically our raw material from that. And I thought I'm just going to show you a very simple method that you can probably do right now if you have the few things that you need. So the main thing that you will need is a sandwich press. So, or some people call it a panini press, sandwich maker, sandwich toaster. That's the main thing you will need. It needs to be a flat one, not the one that has these grooves in it, for grilling meat or whatever. So it needs to be a flat one. And then I would put the sandwich press outside the house, just to make sure that when you are melting the plastic, just to make absolutely sure that you don't do any harm. Like you don't want to have these fumes, even the smell, you don't want to have that in your house. So we are using HDPE plastic. That is number 2 with the recycling symbol number 2, and that plastic melts quite easily, and it also is quite safe in the conditions that our sandwich press will provide. So around between 130 and 160 degrees Celsius, and so you don't want to have a higher temperature, because otherwise you start burning the plastic, and burning the plastic will actually create fumes that are dangerous. But still, make sure you go outside in a very well ventilated space. This time we actually had wind, which is good, so I didn't have to worry too much about even being in the near the sandwich press. But you can also use put a fan next to it and let a fan blow the air away from the press. And then you take your plastic that you you collect. People are actually happy to give you plastic. I know that from experience. So if you need more plastic, don't worry, people will give it to you. And then you can basically start, except you need, I forgot to mention, you need some baking paper. So that's the very simple. So we are using silicone sheets. So if you've got a silicone baking mat, that's even better, because the baking paper actually quite quickly gets brittle, and you can't reuse it really, or you can maybe reuse it once or twice, but then it gets very brittle and you can't use it anymore. So I don't like waste, so we're using these silicone sheets, and we can use them a long time and a lot. And they make a nice structure as well. They're good, they're great. But for this case, we only need some baking paper, and then you can basically start. You have the sandwich press, open the sandwich press up, you put the baking paper in, and put your plastic between the baking paper so that it stays it doesn't have any connection to the actual sandwich press, because when that goes directly on the sandwich press, it'll stick to it and it's hard to get off sometimes. So yeah, and you also damage the surface of the sandwich press when you have to scrape it off. So that's why the baking paper is basically keeping the plastic away from the sandwich press. And then you switch you plug the power in for the sandwich press, and away you go. So it actually melts down fairly quickly here, because it's not much plastic. So it went pretty quick. It took like 5 minutes to melt down. And then the next thing you can do is you can open up the sandwich press, have a look how it looks, and then you can open up the baking paper. Maybe use gloves, because it's actually quite hot, so you don't burn your fingers as well. And then when you've done that, you can actually mix the plastic a bit around just to get a bit of texture in there. And then you shut the sandwich press again, and you wait until it melts again. So when the plastic is hot and you just let the sandwich press do its thing, basically just melt it down, you can't really control the thickness of the plastic. So what I'm doing, I use some spacers. I take these little metal bits that are cut off with an angle grinder from some metal bits that I found, and I've got different thicknesses, and for this one I'm using the real thin ones, and I actually just put them around the plastic, and that just makes sure that when I press the plastic down, that it stays the same thickness all way around, the whole way through. And then you can put a brick. In my case, I put a brick on top, something heavy, something that can actually get hot, because the surface of the sandwich press is got pretty hot. So, and then I just wait until it settles, and so I just heat it up a wee bit longer and turn the sandwich press off. So when you're done with the melting, and if you take it out straight away, the plastic, it will actually, while it's cooling down, it will warp quite a bit, and you will get it'll change its shape, and because it shrinks a little bit when it's cooling down, and it also warps, and that is not the nicest effect, or usually you don't want that. So what I do is I just leave it in the sandwich press while it's cooling down. In this case, I left it in there for about an hour or 1.5 hours, because it wasn't much plastic, and outside it was quite windy and stuff, so it actually cooled down fairly quickly. Usually I leave it in there for 3-4 hours, or I go and open it up the next day, basically cooling it down to room temperature, and then under pressure it won't warp as much. It'll still shrink, but that's not a concern for me. So yeah, so my piece that I used here is warped a little bit. Yeah, I took it out in between, and it's very thin, and the baking paper was crumbled up a little bit already, so I got this warp, but actually it looks quite good. So the next thing I can do is that when I've got this piece, it is a recycled new material, and it was something else before. Now it's a flat sheet of new material, and I can go and start make something new out of it. And this time I'm taking a shape that I had already before. You could also use a cookie cutter shape or whatever shape you like, and I draw around it, and then I just use a little saw to cut it out. And I'm using I leave the offcuts for later. I can remelt them again later. Then I also grind the edges off a little bit with a grinding stone, and then I sand the edges a little bit and just tidy up the edges, and yeah, and then I was quite happy with it. Then I drilled a hole for putting that keyring in there, and voila, that's our piece. And yeah, it's quite thin, but you know, you will be surprised how rigid, how strong that plastic will be. Of course, the thinner it is, the more you know, the more you can actually bend it around and stuff. But especially if you mix a couple different colors together, it'll actually create this structure as well, so it doesn't easily break. If you've got only one color plastic, depending on the color as well, it might actually break as well. But this won't break easily. And yeah, so I'm quite happy with that, and I hope that gave you a bit of an idea of how simple it is. So, and then you can, of course, as we do that, you can take it further and, you know, go into all sorts of directions, make very thick sheets. I have made very thick sheets, for example. I show you. So I've made this in a sandwich press, so that is actually some solid sheet, and that looks pretty cool actually. And I don't really know what I'm doing with it yet. I just wanted to try that out. I had some ideas in the past, but that kind of fell apart. But yeah, so that's quite solid, and that is how much I can actually melt. So that's about 10 millimeters thick. That's how much I can use the sandwich press. So very solid piece. Don't quite know what, maybe you've got an idea what I can do with that, but yeah. And then I cut them out and make all these cool things out of it. We had in the beginning, we started with necklaces and earrings, and now I'm making artworks. And yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully maybe you are keen to do this as well, or you've got some other ideas, let me know. And yeah, thanks for watching. Yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much. See you later.